Barack Obama has started to form his cabinet and is turning to many former Clintonites to fill important positions. But instead of bringing change to the White House, it seems the only thing that they're bringing is a ton of extra baggage.
You're looking at the man who wants to be the next Attorney General of the United States. His name is Eric Holder, and you probably heard of him before. In 1993, President Bill Clinton nominated him for a spot as a U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. 4 years later, he was appointed Clinton's Deputy Attorney General. Holder's colleagues have praised him as a, quote, superb, experienced attorney who can hit the ground running, unquote, and, quote, a classy pick. He's smart, experienced, and has integrity. But his reputation will forever be tarnished for his role in the last-minute Clinton pardons, including that of billionaire Marc Rich. While every president hands out pardons, this one reeked of smoke-filled backroom politics. Marc Rich was charged in 1983 with 51 counts of tax fraud, on top of which he was accused of running illegal oil deals with Iran during the hostage crisis. In 2001, just before leaving office, President Clinton pardoned Rich, who had been in Switzerland since 1983 and his indictment. Guess who was in charge of reviewing the Clinton pardons? You got it, Eric Holder. The pardons sparked outrage across the country. In New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office was infuriated because they were not consulted about the pardon, which is pro forma Justice Department policy. Mayor Rudy Giuliani was the U.S. Attorney who prosecuted Marc Rich.
The pardon of Marc Rich is an outrage. I mean, there's no conceivable explanation of it that I can think of that has anything to do with decent law enforcement. One of the reasons I feel very upset about this is the president, ex-president, in doing what he did, has demeaned the pardon process.
In Washington, lawmakers launched a major investigation into the unusual circumstances surrounding the Rich pardon. The first red flag was a simple one. Under Justice Department guidelines, Rich didn't even qualify for a pardon. A person cannot be pardoned until they have served at least 5 years in prison, and in a case where no prison sentence was imposed, 5 years after the date of conviction. Since Rich fled, he never served jail time and was never convicted. But that's just the half of it. Rich's ex-wife Denise donated to both Hillary and Bill Clinton. She contributed $450,000 to the President's Library Foundation, $1.1 million to the Democratic Party, and donated generously to Hillary's Senate campaign, raising many questions over whether this pardon was bought. It was also revealed that Denise Rich was in attendance at the White House up to 24 times during the Clinton presidency. There was also the Clinton connection to Rich's lawyer, Jack Quinn. Quinn had been White House counsel earlier in the Clinton administration and chief of staff to Vice President Al Gore. During the fall of 2000, when Vice President Gore was running for president, Quinn was lobbying for Rich's pardon, and Eric Holder was lobbying Quinn for a potential job in the Gore administration. The relationship between Quinn, Holder, and the pardon was revealed during congressional testimony in 2001 by former Clinton Chief of Staff John Podesta, who is now a member of Obama's transition team.
The president brought up the Rich case and told us that he thought Mr. Quinn had made some meritorious points in his submission. He clearly had digested the legal arguments presented by Mr. Quinn, since he made a point of noting the Justice Department had abandoned the legal theory underlying the RICO counts and mentioned the Ginsburg-Wolfman tax analyses.
The House Government Reform Committee, chaired by Indiana Congressman Dan Burton, called on several Clinton administration officials to testify, including Holder himself. Along with Podesta, the president's lawyer Bruce Lindsay and the Clinton White House counsel Beth Nolan all found themselves in the spotlight and all said they opposed the pardon of Marc Rich several times.
The staff informed the president that it was our view that the pardon should not be granted.
I did not believe that the pardon was going to go anywhere.
But when Bruce Lindsay was in the line of fire, he too stood by his man and said there was never any mentions of Denise Rich.
There were no discussions in that meeting or in any meeting that I attended with the president in which contributions or the library was discussed, in which DNC contributions were discussed, where contributions to Mrs. Clinton's campaign were discussed.
Or the library.
Not in that, or the library, not in that meeting, not in any meeting.
Also subpoenaed to testify was the former Democratic National Committee Finance Chairwoman Beth DeZortz. DeZortz had attended a party at the White House with Denise Rich on one of the last nights of the Clinton administration. But when she appeared in front of Congress, she did what all innocent people do.
Upon the advice of my counsel, I respectfully decline to answer that question based on the protection afforded me under the United States Constitution.
This past week on Hannity and Combs, Congressman Burton gave his first interview about this case.
Holder, I think in November, he had Quinn talk to him and said, you know, I'd like for you to talk to the people at the White House, and I'd like to send a letter down there asking them to call you. And Holder said to him, according to Quinn, no, don't write a letter, just tell them to call me. And then subsequent to that, he refused to take the petition for the pardon of Marc Rich, and he should have done that. He was the man in charge at that point, and he should have distributed that to the people in the Justice Department that was involved intimately in the pardon process, and he didn't do that.
So what did Holder have to say for himself? Well, he blamed his lack of judgment on his busy schedule.
There are things I wish I could have done differently on that night, but I want people to try to understand that this was not the only thing on my plate on that evening, and it was not one of the chief things that I had on my plate.
7 years later, Eric Holder will find himself under fire in Congress once again. The questions about the Rich pardon still persist. Did Holder give it tacit support because of his own agenda, or perhaps someone else's? And if Holder's to be taken at his word, is simply being too busy an acceptable excuse for not properly vetting one of the most controversial pardons in American history? Also, what does Eric Holder have to say about his role in the Elian Gonzalez case? What was Holder's role in the FALN terrorist pardon? What is Eric Holder's connection to the pardon of Weather Underground members Susan Rosenberg and Linda Evans? Either way, does the nomination of Eric Holder sound like the new kind of politics or change that we were all promised?